All right, today we're going to get into something pretty huge. It's this one simple but really provocative idea. What if we could completely flip the script on how we live? I'm talking about shifting our entire operating system, yours, mine, society's, from being run on fear to being run on love.
So let's just jump right in with a really big question. What if our world is running on the wrong fuel? I mean, think about it. The very engine that's driving our societies, our spiritual beliefs, even our own personal lives, what if it's just wrong? That's the core question we're digging into here.
And really, when you boil it all down, it comes down to these two basic choices, right? You've got fear on one side. That's the engine of control, of judgment, of separation. But then, on the other side, you've got love. And that's the source of connection, creativity, compassion. It's kind of like they're two competing operating systems for how to do life.
You know, this whole way of thinking was really kicked off by this one simple question from Neale Donald Walsch. He asked, what if the relationship between humanity and the divine is not based on fear, but on love? I mean, wow. That one question basically launched his entire Conversations with God series, and it's the idea we're going to unpack right now.
Okay, so if love is so great, if it's the better fuel, then how in the world did we end up with a civilization that seems to run on fear so much of the time? That's what we're looking at next. Just how fear got so tangled up in our spiritual and cultural DNA.
So why does fear have such a tight grip on us? Well, a bunch of different thinkers have chimed in on this. You've got Don Miguel Ruiz, who says we're basically domesticated as kids with reward and punishment. Neale Donald Walsch points out, hey, fear is just easier to sell, It creates dependency. And then Marianne Williamson says it's straight. Fear makes people small, and that makes them easier to manage. At the end of the day, it's a super effective tool for control, even if it comes at a huge cost.
And a huge piece of this fear-based system is punishment. But we have to be really, really clear about the difference between punishment and consequence. They are not the same thing. Punishment is something someone else decides you deserve. It's an act of judgment. Consequence, on the other hand, is just the natural result of an action. It's an act of life. See the difference? One is about power over you. The other is just physics, cause and effect.
And this leads to such a critical point, which Byron Katie just nails with this quote. Punishment creates performance. It makes people put on a show, hide who they really are, and only admit to what's safe. But love, an environment of love, that's what makes truth possible. That's where real, raw honesty can actually show up.
All right, so we've talked about how fear works out there in the big wide world. So the natural next question is, okay, what about in here? How do we take this idea and actually apply it to our own lives? That's what this next part is all about, making that shift from blame to real personal agency.
And this is where things can get tricky, and it's a super important question that Malcolm Gladwell brings up. You hear this idea all the time, right? Co-create your life, manifest your reality, and yeah, it can be super empowering, but it can also get twisted into this really ugly form of victim blaming. So what's the line? Where's the guardrail that keeps us from falling into that trap?
Well, the answer, according to Walsh, is incredibly simple. The line is compassion. That's it. This whole idea of creating your life, it was never meant to be a judgment about your past. It's an invitation about your future, a tool for what's possible. So if it ever makes you feel shame, you know it's being used wrong, period.
But, okay, how does this actually work? Like, practically speaking. The researcher Joe Dispenza lays it out in a really clear way. It's like a domino effect. It starts with your repeated thoughts. Those thoughts create your emotional states. Those feelings then drive your behaviors. And it's your behaviors that, over time, change the actual outcomes in your life. It's a chain reaction, and it all starts inside your own head. And that's the key takeaway right there. This whole concept, it's not about looking backward and beating yourself up for what happened. Not at all. It's about looking forward and realizing you have the power to choose how you respond right now. Agency is all about the future. Blame is stuck in the past. Okay, so we've looked at the personal level. Now let's zoom out. Let's think bigger. What would happen if we applied these same principles to our whole society? How could we reshape our systems to move away from just punishment and retribution and towards something more like restoration? Well, if you look at our justice system right now, for the most part, it's based on retribution. And the central question driving it is pretty simple. How do we make them pay? It is completely obsessed with the past, with settling a score. But a restorative model, well, it asks a completely different question. Instead of how do we make them pay, it asks
how do we make this right? It's all about the future. It's committed to repairing what was broken for everybody involved. The victim, sure, but also the community and even the person who caused the harm.
And what's at the very core of this idea is a pretty radical claim, which Marianne Williamson puts so powerfully. No one is disposable. Think about that. That simple idea completely reframes the entire goal. It's not about punishment anymore, it's about healing. It's not about vengeance, it's about accountability, but without the hate.
So what does this have to do with where we're headed, with things like AI and all the powerful tech we're building? Well, the historian Yuval Noah Harari has a great warning for us. He says technology is just an amplifier. It doesn't have its own values. It's just going to magnify whatever we feed it. So if we feed it fear and control, that's what we'll get, but bigger. If we feed it connection and restoration, well, it will amplify that instead.
And this right here, this really lays out the stakes, doesn't it? It's like two different blueprints for society. If you build on a foundation of fear, your justice system will be about retribution, your culture will be cynical, your government will lean toward control. But if you start with a foundation of love, you get a blueprint for something totally different: restoration, empathy, and dignity. The starting point, it really determines everything that follows. So, all of this brings us to the ultimate choice. And it's maybe not what you think. It's a subtle shift, but it's a really profound one. The whole point of this isn't to sell you on one right answer. It's not about finding the perfect belief system that fixes everything. No, the real power, the real takeaway here is about learning to ask a better question. And that question is this: who do you choose to be? Not what happened to you, not what's fair or unfair, but in response to all of it, who do you choose to be? And that one question, it takes all these huge abstract ideas and brings them right back down to earth, right here, right now, in your hands. Because at the end of the day, that choice is always, always yours.